Technical difficulties. You guys want to learn more about mermaids? I'm going to keep going about mermaids for all those who are not live. Certain authors argue that sirens with both human and fish aspects represent the passage from days on which it was permitted to eat meat to fast days, but they are generally considered to be the opposite pole from Christ the fisherman. They too catch the faithful fish who approach and demand proof from them, but instead of elevating the fish to the heavens and offering them eternal life, they plunge them into the dark. I already read this part. Sorry. In the 17th century, Mutis Liber, which contains a small siren moving on the black wave of the third and final circle, and in Basil Valentin's Azoth de Philosophes, 1659, featuring a siren from whose breast the sun and moon pour forth in streams of gold and silver. Here is the alchemical siren from the Azoth de Philosophes, where she has gold and silver come streaming from her breasts. The double tail. Here is situated in the center of the four elements. A siren holds a cup with a snake in it from the secret Egyptian figures of the Solidonius 18th century. Interesting. So this is an alchemical symbol here. The mermaid, a cup with a snake in it. And then it looks like an X with fire. And then these are flowers. And then this is like a guy blowing wind. I don't know what this is. Maybe like a... It looks like maybe a ring, like an figure 8 of dirt. Among the many alchemical representations of sirens, the most famous is the figure known as the Anima Mercuri, taken from the Solidonius, an 18th century manuscript. This siren wears a heavy crown and has long, flowing hair covering her back. Her wings are spread, her tail ends in a double fluke, and in her right hand is a goblet containing a serpent and surrounded by the four elements, among which the earth appears as a flowering island. Jung considered this figure to be the anima mundi, condensing the dual feminine motif of Eden. For the Klauowski, it was the synthesis between the destructive woman and her counterpart, knowledge. In Oniric and alchemist symbolism, the transformation from human into fish became a metaphor for entering the unconscious world of dreams, inebriation, and death. It is also symbolic of regression to a primitive state, the Heraclitean hypothesis that men descended from fish having been reasserted by modern biology. And lastly, there are considerable psychoanalytical implications attached to the fish. For the Freudian Roheim, for example, the fusiform tail is a powerful phallic symbol, and the sirens, by exhibiting a tail penis when the male expects to see a vulva, become the image of the phallic woman. We can exclude the possibility that, in the course of their evolution, sirens regressed from warm-blooded birds to cold-blooded fish. Instead, from the form of the tail, dolphins, sea mammals seem to be responsible for this new hybrid, a fact with numerous implications. An animal venerated by the ancient Greeks, the dolphin was also dear to Apollo, to whom in that form a sanctuary was dedicated at Delphi. With its darting, compact body, the dolphin asserted itself by its playful character, its passion for music, and its gestures of friendship to those about to be overwhelmed by the sea. The constellation of the dolphin in the heavens, according to the ancients, is the proof of Zeus's recognition of that generosity. Here's a siren trumpeter, a detail from the Triumph of Neptune from the 15th century book of paintings. So, mermaid as trumpeter. Look at, so mermaids are associated, and sirens associated with sound and the ripples. Thanks, guys. So sound is feminine, light is masculine. If the sirens were the result of a hybridization with the dolphin, this, in addition to physical strength, would have also passed on to them new psychological qualities such as cheerfulness and openness to mortal humans. A mysterious link also binds the dolphin to the feminine. In Greek, Delphis signifies cetacean, large fish, and Delphoi, the place of Apollo's cult, and Delphis, the uterus or vulva. The latter connection had already been documented by Hippocrates and Aristotle. The transition from bird woman to sea maids complete, the sirens continued to hold musical instruments, but now they included the horns, lutes, and viols of the time. Their hands sometimes held fish, oars, and fans, but above all, two objects designated to become their inseparable attributes, the mirror and the comb. The flat surface of the water is the original mirror. Entering this terrain, one inevitably turns to Carl Jung. And of course, the looking glass in Alice in Wonderland, the ocean is a mirror, water is a mirror. You go through the looking glass, you go underwater into your subconscious, unconscious. And like a lot of movies like was it Get Out, or when they're sinking like into water, that's like they're sinking into their unconscious. He who looks into the mirror of water sees first of all his own image. He who goes toward himself risks meeting himself. The mirror does not flatter, it shows accurately that which is being reflected. That is the face which we never reveal to the world, because we conceal it behind the persona, the actor's mask. The encounter with oneself is one of the most unpleasant of experiences from which we flee, projecting all that which is negative onto the world around us. That also kind of goes into the story of Narcissus and Echo, because Narcissus chooses his own reflection, so he's like going into himself. It's kind of like a MGTOW, like men going their own way. They reject the feminine, and he's going into himself, like into his own subconscious, which I guess is okay, like a self-exploration, but he's rejecting all of the feminine and sound at that aspect. Like diving into his own subconscious, like a self-mental masturbation is in itself destructive and kills him and ages him. This says this is an English woodcut from the 16th century. It's a mermaid with a comb and a mirror. Flat, smooth sea, reflective, iridescent surfaces, the sirens embrace myriad meanings associated with the natural mirror of water, but no less so with the artificial mirror they now possess. The mirror deforms, or better still, metamorphoses. The looking glass, the implement of the seamen of the Mediterranean, used in the night to find and attract fish. The burning glass, as dazzled as the Platonic diamond spheres where stood the 8 sirens. The speculum, the mirror that explores the darkest cavities of the woman's body. That of the sirens is a hand mirror, a circle on a cross, graphic symbol of the planet Venus, a symbol that also indicates the female sex. Thus the mirror, although a new attribute, does no more than confirm the siren's birthright, which is belonging to the fluid element, their luminous and at the same time dark character, the innermost aspect of the feminine. In addition with their mirrors, the sirens look at themselves, study their own appearance, speculate, and in the sense of searching, examining, investigating, sounding, scrutinizing, meditating. This literal self-reflection has its goal in knowing, as was implicit in the classical sirens, who tantalized others with their knowledge. We know that Dionysus, the divine child, was murdered by the Titans while he was immersed in his own reflection, a terrible act of knowledge that the Giorgio Colli translate in these terms: mirroring oneself, manifesting and expressing oneself, knowing is nothing else. Only Dionysus exists. We in our world are his false appearance, that which he sees when he places himself before the mirror. I didn't know that Dionysus' story was kind of the same as Narcissus' story. Did you guys know that? That Narcissus was murdered while immersed in his own reflection? Akuhead? Do you believe in E.T.? Yeah, I know, it's weird. So many of these stories are like, just like, passed down. The mirror is also illusion and lends itself easily to illusionism. It represents the double, the shadow, the soul outside the body. Those who would evoke the spirits use smooth surfaces, mirrors, spheres, crystal cups, swords. With the game of mirrors, one can even deceive skylarks. With the aid of a mirror, Perseus was able to slay Medusa. With the instrument used to mirror themselves, the sirens can also dazzle men. Ovid envisioned the nymph Salmacius gazing at her reflection in the natural mirror of the surface of her pool, languorously combing her hair until the appearance of the youth Hermaphroditus, with whom she merges in a total fusion. This is a Paolo Baluso, the passage from stiletto heels to fins, from clinging dresses to a pisciform body, from woman to mermaid, 1984. In Iconologia, a treatise from the 16th century, Cesar Ripa of Perugia considered the ways sirens were represented, interpreting colors, positions, and other noteworthy things, and concluded that in depicting the sirens, the ancients had already included the element of deceit. Subsequently, his contemporaries, in portraying them with mirrors, were simply reinforcing the sense of their mendacity, falsity of love or deceit, woman superbly dressed, or siren looking into a mirror. The mirror is the true symbol of falsity, because although it appears to reflect all which is placed before it, it is only a similitude, possessing no reality, in which the left hand becomes the right and the right becomes the left. In other words, the mirror, an object as extraordinary as the sirens and as ambiguous, offers truth and deception, obvious proof and duplicity. Thus, Jacques Bril could deduce, every mirror is magic because every mirror is a trap for souls, and it is these instruments of autistic regression which those man-eaters carry with them. This is called the sailor's trap, 17th century, from the world of the incredible. And so the sense of sight is sharpened to the detriment of the sense of hearing, opening the way for the important component of voyeurism. Now the sirens seduce with their bodily presence alone. Now it is essential that they be seen. The Erinyes and the Gorgons, who are not made for seduction, are distinguished by a head of ruffled, disorderly hair, a sign that they belong to chaos, or at least to a feral, alien, and undesirable world. In contrast, long and flowing, silky and sinuous hair cannot fail to attract. Thus, besides the mirror, the sirens have also armed themselves with the comb. The waves of their hair are entwined with the waves of the sea, with the waves of matter itself. Ripples of waves, sonorous waves, luminous waves, undulating and regular sinusoid design, pure sound, pure light. After being depicted with raven Mediterranean hair on Greek, Etruscan, and Roman vases, and in Christian imagery for 10 centuries, the sirens became predominantly blonde, perhaps with the emergence of Celtic mermaid. Combing their wet hair, the sirens produce gleaming iridescences. Their hair itself echoes the liquid element, flowing over their shoulders like a waterfall. The comb evokes water, like a fishbone itself used as an early comb. This fundamental graphic sign, a horizontal line with vertical ones descending from it, was used by several ancient agricultural civilizations to indicate water falling from the clouds. Combing their hair, the sirens scatter droplets of water. At this point, a comment of Gilbert Durand comes to mind for the endless motifs it suggests. The hair is not connected to water because it is feminine, but it is made feminine because it is the hieroglyphic for water, water which manifests in menstrual blood. This is a mermaid with comb and mirror, a bas-relief in wood on a partition between stalls in the 15th century St. Peter's Cathedral. Eric Newman also stressed the close relationship that exists between the mysteries of feminine transformation and the water element, whether menstrual blood or amniotic fluid or mother's milk. In Greek, ketis, the Latin pecten, and the archaic Italian pedagone, the word comb also designates the pubis. In the same way, the sea mollusk called petian in Italy, also known in Galatia as Venera, recalls the form of the female genitals. The comb untangles hair and cards wool, conveying the hirsute, which leads back to animality, animal sensuality. Most evocatively, the French word for the flax comb, a tool used to align and refine flax fibers, is siren. Rohim argues that the bird woman storming around Ulysses, who was standing stiff as a rod, were representations of the orgasm, and the comb of the fish woman was linked to pubic hair, or more specifically, masturbation. These fish sirens were impregnated with a sexuality totally absent in the primitive ones. Remember how Aphrodite punished them precisely for their stubborn refusal to have sexual relations with anyone, be they gods or mortals? In matters related to sexual sphere, the ancients looked to Eros or Aphrodite, who could become Urania when the eroticism was more intellectual, or Pandemus when related to immediate physical desire. Lack of restraint was attributed to Silenus or Satyrs, to Menaides or nymphs. These are sirens playing bagpipes, horn, trumpet, marine, and viol. This is 1350. Now the symbol became flesh. It no longer enjoyed the abstract dignity or allure of knowledge with which it had been conferred by the ancient philosophers. The animal aspect prevailed, and in this inferior, baser part had to be subdued. In addition, the sirens are pictured using musical instruments forbidden by the church for appealing to the lower instincts, the same instruments once ascribed to Dionysus, but their music counted less as their ways of seduction grew merely sexual. Yamanja, the African-American sea goddess, who today still boasts a multitude of followers, provides a clear example of this process. The Yoruba siren does not sing, but listens to the words that all of her followers know by heart and sing in chorus. Yamanja, come from the sea. Siren, siren, come, let's play in the sand. The siren of the sea has appeared. The siren wants to play. How sweet to die among the waves. On the second day of February, so 2/2, a follower of Yamanja throws an offering into the sea in Salvador, Bahia in 1990. picture. It's called Bathing in Moonlight. I thought I was gonna get to the part where we talk about the devilfish, the Starbucks chick. Oh, look at this one. This is called The Bath, 1966. I like that one. That's a cool one. Oh, here, yeah. Melusine. Melusine. This book is called, it's by Mary Lale. It's called Seduction and the Secret Power of Women. The Lure of Sirens and Mermaids. I'm going to talk a little about the Melusine because Holly brought it up, and that is very important. Okay. Toward the end of the 14th century, Jean d'Arras wrote Melusine to relate the true story of the amazing events which occurred in the noble castle of Lusignan in Pt2. Melusine is the French siren par excellence. However, her appearance at the moment she exercises her powers is less like a fish woman than like Delphina, the serpent woman who sheltered Jove when Typhon cut his tendons, and to Echidna, who was a mixture of human, reptile, and goose, queen of earthquakes and object of veneration at Hierapolis. Melusine, by her mother's curse, is transformed into a serpent from the waist down. As her aquatic essence is minor, this metamorphosis occurs only on Saturday as she bathes. To compensate, she can also enjoy her kind's earlier aerial essence, sprouting wings when the occasion acquires it. Count Raymondin makes her acquaintance near a fountain of wisdom and is seduced by the beauty of her voice and intelligence. He asks her to marry him, but she demands a promise from him as a condition. Swear to me on your honor never to attempt to see me on Saturday, nor to discover where I might be. And in exchange, I swear to you on the salvation of my soul that on the day I shall do nothing to compromise your honor, but only to reflect on ways to increase your prestige and fortune. We can note that Melusine immersed herself in the animal depths of the hybrid in search of supernatural powers. Indeed, as a consequence of her Saturday disappearances, the wealth of her husband increased. Raymondin would have gone on happily respecting their pact if his brother had not convinced him to spy on his wife through the keyhole on that fateful day. So this is an actual picture of Melusine taking a bath on Saturday. Terrorized, Raymondin watched the metamorphosis, membraned bat's wings, wrinkled skin like that of a dragon, ungulate's hooves, silver blue scales, the colors of Lusignan coat of arms, and slithering along the floor the coils of a serpent. Raymondin, who had violated the pact, inveighs against fate. Melusine, with infinite grief, must leave him. She climbs to the top of the tower, where we return to the account of d'Arras. Emitting a chillingly mournful cry, she launched herself into the air, gliding over the fruit grove, and transformed into an enormous serpent, some 5 meters long. The window ledge from which she flew can still be seen, and the line of her foot is still imprinted. The villagers stared upward in horror. She went 3 times around the town of Lusignan, crying piercingly and sobbing with the voice of a woman. The expression "le cri de Melusine" is used in France to describe the disconsolate sound of the hunted animal. Oh, interesting. Melusine would return during the night, secretly to protect her children and even to nurse the youngest, as the iconography illustrates. In popular tradition, she is either idealized or vituperated. Melusine is a refined lady, an accomplished musician, a sorceress, a great transformer, or else she is an evil witch, a dark and lustful woman, and is furthermore the enemy of Saint Louis, like her son Geoffrey de Lusignan. It is simply by chance that Melusine acquires her powers on the old Sabbath day, like Mary and the witches. More than one author has elected as her historical counterpart Eleanor of Aquitaine, the inspiration of the troubadours, Countess of Pt2, Queen of France and England, who brought to Henry II territory, wealth, and military strength, as well as the prestige of the southern civilization. She exits from the center stage because of her husband's action, but not, however, allow this to prevent her from watching over her children. It is not surprising then that Richard the Lion-Hearted declared himself to be the son of Melusine Eleanor, and in addition to this, Geoffrey de Bouillon, the Counts of Toulouse, Luxembourg, and Sassange, and the Dukes of Saint-Vallier, Beauvais, Saint-Gelais, Chevenon, Lansac, La Rochefoucauld, Undines, and of course Lusignan have the figure of a siren on their coat of arms. Eileen! Genevieve can say the French words better than me. In a more recent reading, Melusine is associated with the catastrophe of World War I by Andre Breton. This is a frontispiece for one of the first editions of Melusine. Spied on by her husband at her bath, she flies away forever. Before being interpreted by a man's blundering impatience, Melusine was able to exist outside of historical time. In this liberty, she represented the joie de vivre of nature and childhood. It is war that is savage, not she, not that voice that might have spoken of love and loyalty to her companion and her sons and remained unheeded. Melusine is the child woman of that species, so rare that has always fascinated the poets, since time has no hold over her. This is Gyo 1930 from the album of Japanese painter, the Koiki Book of Shinto Religion by Yasumaro 1712, legend similar to that of Melusine. A daughter of god of sea and bride of Huwori turns into a sea monster every time she gives birth, and surprised by her husband vanishes forever. So this is a Japanese Melusine, same story. The husband has to give her a day to be by herself. Paracelsus, 1493 to 1541, one of the founders of experimental medicine, sustained that just as the comets are monsters of the stars, and midgets and giants are monsters produced by the union of sylphs and pygmies, the sirens are monsters of the interbreeding of nymphs. The sirens swim for the most part on the surface of water rather than below it, live in the manner of fish, and although not having the appearance of women, in some ways resemble them. It should be remembered that the nymph who unites with a mortal man will be present at the final judgment, because through that union she acquires a soul, and therefore a woman, and her union with a man cannot be dissolved without her consent. If her husband takes another wife without her permission, she will reappear and kill him. This is Arthur Rackham illustration for the Undine of La Montfaucon, 1909. Despite the fact that Paracelsus considered the sirens merely monstrous fish, he does deserve credit for having fashioned the name Undine and established the character of this marine creature whose destiny would be inextricably bound to that of the sirens. For the Swiss alchemists, an Undine is an intermediate between human and animal, one of the elemental spirits, like the nymphs of the land, the salamanders of fire, and the sylphs of air. The Undine resides in the water and, lacking a soul, is destined to dissolve into foam unless a man saves her with his love. But her relationships with men are ruinous, and as proof of this, Paracelsus offered a poem written in 1320 by Ignaz von Stauffenberg, and obviously hearkening back to the same mythic well as Melusine, in which he related the saga of an ancestor of his who died as a result of having broken his promise to keep secret the true identity of his bride, an elemental spirit of Elba. Drawing inspiration from Paracelsus, the Baron Friedrich de la Montfort, 1777 to 1843, penned a short story called Undine. The heroine, although she has the form of a normal woman, is an aquatic spirit destined to dissolve into nothingness. One day, the waves deposit her near the cabin of a couple of fisherfolk. They adopt her in the memory of their small daughter who had disappeared mysteriously. Undine acquired a soul thanks to the love of Huldbrand, a young man, but because of the continuous interference of his uncle, another elemental spirit, the union is endangered. Abandoned by Undine, Huldbrand becomes enamored of Bertholdi, the true daughter of the couple. As the second matrimony is about to be celebrated, Undine, as was destined, returns to offer Huldbrand a death consonant with her aquatic essence. And she kissed him with a kiss of celestial sweetness, as if she would not take her lips from him, but held him very close to her, continuing to weep, as though in that weeping she would completely dissolve. And her tears penetrated the eyes of Huldbrand and invaded and drowned him in a sweet pain, until he could no longer breathe and fell softly from the arms of his love lifeless onto the pillow. I suffocated him with tears, said Undine to the servants as she encountered in the vestibule as she went out. And passing through the group, which she recoiled in fear, she headed slowly toward the well. This is called Troubadour, 1959. It's like a lady living in a tree. Shifting to Anglo-Saxon terrain, it seems natural to start with the Isle of Man, the traditional dwelling place of the mermaids. In the medieval church of Zen-Nor, we find many carvings commemorating the youths seduced by mermaids and dragged to their underwater realm. Though Morrigan was believed to inhabit the swamps of Pilger, local legends warn men to be prudent in autumn when storms bring mist, because the Morrigan, around All Saints' Day, hangs lanterns on the willows to trick travelers into losing their way. Then she plays an enchanting tune on her cane flute, transforming them into goldfish and keeping them in still waters. Rumor has it that the Morrigan lost her magic powers when Puck, king of the elves, taught the men of the island how to exorcise her one St. John's night. William Shakespeare, 1564 to 1616, mentions the sirens on at least 4 occasions, each time highlighting a different feature. In the famous Sonnet 119, in which the speaker recalls the pain he felt during his lover's absence, the figure of the classical siren weeping comes forth. What potions have I drunk of sirens' tears, distilled from Limbeck's foul as hell within, applying fears to hope and hopes to fears, still losing when I saw myself to win. I know, 119, 911. Alright guys, I'm going to stop there. But thanks for joining me. Thanks, Genevieve.